concept of rhythmatism. And rhythmatism is the study of the patterns that weave the fabric of life.
If you know the beat of life, then you can...
If you know where the beat is going to land, you can jump on it.
Ah, there you are. Here's something remarkably interesting for you. Now, this is a recording studio. You can probably tell that by the thickness of the door. And this is deepest England, as opposed to darkest Africa, which I'll explain about in a moment. Now, I've come out here to Stewart Copeland's house. Now, Stewart Copeland, you know, from the Police, when he's been out and about, travelling all around the world, doing things like soundtracks and making movies and experimenting with African music and the like. Well, I've got to talk to him in a minute and find out all about that. Now, you do realise, consequently, that this is his kit, the kit. Now, I know I shouldn't play it, but I've got a couple of minutes before I get a chance to talk to him about Africa and everything, so maybe I could sort of, Stuart, up till now you've been a relatively straightforward drummer, songwriter, trying a bit of the old film scores and the like, and suddenly rocketed away off to Africa to come back with something which became known as the Rhythmatist. Explain a little why you suddenly decided to go to Africa of all places.
Well, Africa of all places, Africa is surely one of the most exciting places to go. I mean, doesn't everyone want to go there? Lions, tigers, Watusis. It's a very exciting place. And for the kind of film that I was trying to make, which is a video cassette kind of film, I needed a very interesting subject that didn't require a lot of explanation, because I was making a, or rather I made now, a video LP, an LP for your eyes, which means it's a film, but it doesn't rely on a story, because once you've seen a story once, you don't want to see it again and again, and I want it to be something that you can play again and again. And I wasn't really interested in making a documentary, so I had to find a subject that was just fascinating to look at, where I could just hose the place down and get millions of pictures and put music to them instead of information or story.
As a drummer, was it the rhythms of Africa which sort of drew you there, or was it the grand scenery? Or?
Well, obviously the rhythms are the main thing, but once I got there, they just turned out to be a small part of the incredibleness of Africa. I mean, the animals, the tribes, the culture, and everything. There's just so much stuff going on there. Sure, there's plenty of rhythm too, though.
Did you have a clear-cut idea on what you were going to do when you went out there? You knew, right, I'm going to come back with this.
I had a concept, a very clear concept, which was written on a scruffy piece of paper, which I lost after about 2 days shooting. As far as the actual shots we got, we were pretty much thinking on our feet. The director and I, Jean-Pierre Dutillot, would go out ahead and find our locations and our tribes and find out what was going on. You know, if there was any kind of ritual happening, a rain dance or a circumcision or any of these fascinating ceremonies that they all have, we'd go and film it. Or we'd find out where they're going, introduce ourselves to the tribe, you know, make friends and stuff, and then we'd bring in the crew and shoot it. So we pretty much plotted our course as we went along. But the concept we had before we went, and the concept is the concept of rhythmatism. And rhythmatism is the study of the patterns that weave the fabric of life.
If you know the beat of life, then you can...
If you know where the beat is going to land, you can jump on it.
So rhythmatism actually exists. It's a real...
Well, I mean, it started out as a frivolous concept. I mean, here am I, you know, getting all this incredible reward from society for this obscure talent that I have for banging things in rhythm. There must be something important to it, I figured. And so I went out. So I've been thinking about this for years, you know, and I've evolved a whole philosophy based on rhythmatism. And it turns out that there are now Germans with unpronounceable names, you know, philosophers teaching this stuff in university and stuff. It turns out to be a real serious subject. And I thought I made it up.
Africa, you had problems filming when you were over there, all kinds of lunatic
Well, I
stories.
didn't have so much problems as adventures, of which there are quite a few. We had to get permits, which wasn't a very exciting adventure of treading the offices of the bureaucrats. You know, in these places where the tribes are way out there in the wilderness, all of the land in Africa, it's all parceled off into nations. And in these nations, there are ministries of culture and stuff like that. And to film these tribesmen who've never even heard of this nation that has erected itself around them, you have to go into the nearest big city and get a permit from the minister of this or the ministry of that, which was a hassle. There were some times when the hassle actually went beyond hassle, like when they threw us in jail.
What was that all about? What happened there?
Oh, it wasn't anything really that dramatic. It was going from Zaire to the Congo. We crossed Zaire, okay. We were in Bujumbura, which I'm sure you've heard of. I mean, everyone knows Bujumbura.
I was there last week.
Yeah, but they didn't have a Congolese embassy, which is where we wanted to go. And so we had to just kind of take potluck and show up at the border. And we crossed Zaire to get to the Congo, and we crossed the Congo River from Kinshasa. And they wouldn't let us in, so they sent us back across the river. When we got back to Zaire, instead of being in transit, we were in persona non grata. We were like refused, and obviously either terrorists, CIA agents, or something like that. And so they threw us in the coolie until they could think about what to do with us, which took them about 24 hours. And thankfully their decision was to let us go. So they let us go. The most exotic place, I suppose, was the Congo. We went up the Congo River, way up until the point where it isn't the Congo River anymore, and often the branches up the Oweso River. And way up there is the heart of pygmy country, and we found pygmies there. And we went deeper and deeper into the jungle and found pygmies, finally, who had never even heard of white people. Actually, they had heard that there's a big world out there.
But never had first-hand experience.
But they'd never met anybody. They had no T-shirts. They had no beers. T-shirts, incidentally, are the first vestige of civilization, so-called, to make it into the jungle.
Is that a currency over there?
It's, in a way, yeah. I mean, we got further and further out, and deeper and deeper into the jungle. And gradually, as all the accoutrements of civilization fell away behind us, the last vestige to disappear was the T-shirt and beer.
And beer makes its way in there.
Yeah. One of the final stages before we left it all behind, the pygmies who have had some contact were wearing T-shirts and drinking beer, but still hunting with their poison darts and everything. And eventually went deeper in. They took us into their cousins who didn't even have T-shirts and beer.
People think of like pygmies as like one race over there, one tribe, one small group of people.
Well, it
branches.
There are lots of different tribes, but it is you could describe it as a different race, I think. They have different kind of facial characteristics, different bone structure from the Bantu, who are the other tribe there, who are taller, darker skinned, and have slightly different, they definitely look different. A lot of it's not right. I mean, they file their teeth as well. Their teeth are like saws. They're pretty interesting people.
How do they react to the giant blonde?
We were probably the biggest, ugliest, whitest things they'd ever seen in their lives. But they're very furtive, very timid, and getting in to meet them was hard. We went through a lot of deserted villages where we'd be walking down the jungle trail and we'd hear the sounds of stuff, or we'd know that there was a village there. We'd go and it would be deserted, and we'd know that they were in the trees watching, to see what we did. And we didn't do anything. We'd sit around for a while and we'd wait for them to come out, and they wouldn't, so we'd move on.
You took local guides?
Well, we had several, because the Bantu are hated by the pygmies, and vice versa, kind of. They don't get along very well. But the Bantu are the one who could speak. You see, the interpreting situation was about a four-way thing, where we'd have a person from the town who could speak a little bit of French and a little bit of Lingala. Lingala is like the Pidgin French, which the different tribes used to speak to each other. And so we'd have somebody who could speak a bit of French and a bit of Lingala. And the Lingala would get us through to the Bantu. And the Bantu guy would be able to speak a little bit of, like, some of the Pygmy dialects of the ones that were near to the civilization. And those would take us into the jungle. And so we'd have, like, 4 people to have to talk through. You know, like an animal runs across our view. It's some exotic animal. So what's that? And, you know, it goes down to the next guy. What's that? And it goes to the next guy. What's that? What's that? What's that? It comes back all the way back. Food.
My hosts seem to take for granted my ingestion of their native weed. Fortunately, my college education in California has prepared me for this trial. I do, however, notice a perceptual shift in my appreciation of their music. There's a hole where my head was.
How much we're able to communicate with each other, because they're used to it. They're used to the fact that they're separated either by huge distances or by impenetrable jungle, and they're quite used to communicating without the use of language.
Were they pleased to see you?
Yeah, they were. It was something new for them. I mean, they were fascinated. They all gathered around and watched everything we did, and we let them look through the cameras and stuff. And the things they enjoyed most of all were like Polaroid. I had a Polaroid camera. They take a picture of a group of them. And they all look and they see this picture materialize in front of their eyes, and they look and they say, "Hey, look, there's the chief, and now there's my wife, and there's my kids, and hey, who's that guy?" And for every one of them, they'd look at this picture and they'd recognize everybody in there, but there'd be one complete stranger, which of course was themselves, because they don't have any mirrors.
They have no idea what they look like.
Yeah, which was amazing. I mean, you could see them looking at this, and then they'd look at one guy there and they'd say, "Well, who's that?" And that would be themselves. I mean, these people are not even Iron Age. They're not even Stone Age, really, because there are no real hard rocks in the jungle. The hardest substance in this part of the jungle is wood. I mean, the rocks, it's just kind of clay. There's no real hard rocks.
Is that because it's rainforest?
Yeah, it's very mushy. And everything they make out of they have an even more expendable society than we do. They make a crossbow. They shoot a few times. It falls apart. They make another one. They just pull another few strips off a tree, whip it together in seconds, and they're equipped again.
How do you feel about going into like really remote, not even Iron Age parts, like you said there, sort of taking 20th century technology and something fundamentally wrong
I felt
about
like
it?
the first germ of pollution, as a matter of fact. This is another deep philosophical problem we had. When we left, they were giving us presents and stuff, which is what they do, and we obviously felt we had to give them presents back. But the presents that we had to give them back were like plastic containers, or ground sheet, and things which are useful, but in a way are pollution. And the horrible thing is that they gravitate towards this kind of pollution. They, in their own environment, are the lords of their environment. They're in complete control. They have the jungle. They're lords of the jungle. But the minute they see somebody wearing a T-shirt, they want a T-shirt, and they gravitate towards the towns where they go from being lord of their environment to being on the bottom rung of our civilization, on the very outskirts of it. But they go from the top of their own pile to the bottom of this pile. I'm an ethno-music buff, and I don't actually, like I didn't go to Africa to learn new forms of the paradiddle. I didn't find any new forms of the paradiddle, but just the atmosphere, the ambience, the style of it has kind of gotten under my skin and will be coming out.
Was it difficult to sort of bring all that back, to actually transfer it, to sort of recreate what you experienced over there, back over here?
Well, for this, I have my machines. I did several kinds of recording there. The main kind was with a tape machine. I recorded these songs. Only, here in the modern world, we have our 12-minute dance mixes. But in Africa, they have the 6-hour dance mix. One of their songs will last for like all day. It builds up, and with the children banging on drums, and then the grown-ups get involved, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and builds up and builds up and builds up, and whatever it is they're celebrating, the whole thing just builds up in intensity, but it takes years. So I have a 6-hour recording of a piece of music. The other way is to record a 1 or 2 second, what's called a sample. And this 1 second sample, which will be one voice or one drum or one plucked note on an instrument, is called a sample. And I feed these samples into my computer, which is this guy here.
Right. Show me.
And here, let me load this
where do you
guy.
store your samples, man? This is like 2
Samples are
seconds of
stored on
music,
there,
which is a computer disc.
which is a computer disc.
All right.
I'll stick the computer disc in the computer.
This is a musical computer.
This is a Fairlight musical computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I load it up, and
Did you have to relearn techniques to sort of be able to adopt to use all this sort of thing?
yeah, well, the main thing I had to learn how to do is put the discs in correctly.
That's the wrong way around, I see.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. There we are.
It starts printing up everything you recorded on there, and an explanation
Well,
of
what it does is I've loaded them in there now. And for instance, this here, this is a tin can recorded on the east coast of Africa.
They sound different there.
Played by the Giriyama tribe. And you see, I have a sample, which is that,
Mm-hmm.
but I can play it anywhere on the keyboard.
And it moves it up and down the scale of music.
Yeah. Here's another one, which is a similar sort of thing. But here's some voices.
Those are human voices.
These are human voices. These are actually Maasai tribesmen.
That's
that I
not
recorded.
actually a recording, though, is it?
Well, it's a recording of that much. Well, I actually have a recording of 6 hours of music, and I just cut off like 1 second of it, which is one, whoa, and I can play a melody on it, you know.
But it's actually recreating it. It's a digital recreation of the original sample as opposed to a recording of it.
Yeah, that's right. And then I can.
Yes.
That's a double bass
Double bass.
from the tribe of London session musicians.
Quite a different tribe, that, isn't it?
I can put in a note there. Yeah, just put in that note.
Mm-hmm.
So when I tell it to play, well, the other stage this thing does is, you'll notice a number there. That's pattern number 22. I can write any number of patterns. And so if I just tell it to play this bar, this is one bar, 4
Right.
beats in a bar, and that's a bar. And I place these notes in it.
That's actually musical notation.
These are musical notes.
Yeah.
And I tell it that I want it to play, when it goes 1, 2, plays that note there, and that note there, and so on. So if I say play 22.
So in order to do this, you actually have to be a musician.
That's one bar playing over again. 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, This is another form of sampling, which is modern drums. This is the standard dance rhythmic drum box.
As heard on most dance records in one way or another.
Play A. See, that's pattern 1, followed by pattern 2, and that's pattern 3. They're not changing that much.
But you stop a second. What you've actually done is create something new. You changed quite dramatically from the original noises.
Oh yeah, well I've just added them all up into I've melted them together, like, you know, like eggs are not very similar to the form of egg you would see when it shows up in a cake.
I see. There are those who criticise sort of electronic music like the Fairlight and everything as being not creative.
You must be joking.
They say that it's electronic, it's synthetic, there's no feel to it.
Well, I mean, a guitar is a synthetic creation of a sound wave in the same way that the synthesizer is. I mean, that's rubbish. That's people with bright-colored socks arguing in bistros. You know, it's rubbish. Anything that makes a sound is an instrument of one kind or another. Whether it's high technology that creates the sound or low technology that creates the sound is irrelevant. It's the tune and the imagination that goes into it that's important.
It's clear that you need to be more of a musician in order to do this than merely a computer operator, is what a lot of people seem to think.
Well, this computer, I mean, I would never have been able to design or build this program. And it's made so that you don't really have to know that much about computers to run it. And I certainly don't know anything about computers. I know how to operate this one. Okay, this guy here is synchronizing the computer and the drum box. This drum box is your average drum box.
Right.
So if I say go, what we're hearing is the drum box.
Right.
Which is synchronized to this guy. And this is something I've written before, you know.
So this just enables you to play along to the drum machine with this?
Yeah. And I've already written that.
Right.
So this is down here, and there's the double bass. And I'll write a pattern on there, you know. That's all right, and I'll put it into record. See, it's playing that back. And then let's go up here and get this guy.
And these are again using the voices that you brought back from Africa.
And I've written that guy, and he'll play along quite happily.
Okay.
Let's write some lows in, shall we? Wait a minute, I've turned them off. Hang on. Let's get going again here. Okay, off he goes. Those 2 minutes work. Let's write some AAAs in there. I have to play it on the right note so it's in tune and in the right time.
Took a single from the Rhythmatist, Coteja, Cotea?
Coteja, it's not Spanish, it's Coteja, Zairean.
Right. The story behind that?
Well, it's actually a traditional song. The Coteja is a dance, and it's a dance of purification. And to do this dance, you have to take off all of your clothes, take off all your personality, and start from scratch. And it's an allegory of Zairean society, which needs to cleanse itself from within. And it's a song from the banks of the Congo River, which was found by Ray Lema, who sings the song. You know, there's talking about the morality of it, you know, like taking a musician's performance and taking one note of that performance, a recording of it, and then using it like this. It's a point that the law hasn't gotten into yet, but I'm sure will very soon. People like Peter Gabriel, or who are people who make a lot of really good sounds. He's noticed sounds that he's recorded showing up on other people's recordings. I personally haven't actually sampled anybody else's record to get like a brass hit. It's sort of like scratch, you know, where they get one brass, they get a moment, yeah. I personally have been sampled, though.
Yeah, he was.
I've been reading, you know, like the drummer with Bruce Springsteen has taken, like, Every Breath You Take. There's a big snare drum hit at the beginning of it. They've taken that, and they used that sampled snare drum on a few of their records. They've processed it and changed it around and so on, so I can't really, but
How'd you
it
feel
started
about
out
that?
as my snare drum hit
Yeah.
on those records.
Isn't using other people's performance, like that one moment in time, like an African singing or a session musician's particular note on the cello, isn't that sort of exploitation if you're using their artwork?
It's no different, really, from recording 6 hours of their music and using that. You know, recording 1 second and doing whatever I want to it is really no different from recording 6 hours and doing whatever I want to it. The important thing for me is the result, the cross-pollination, the fact that I can use elements from anywhere. I'm not even going to stop for a minute to think about the morality of stealing somebody's music or anything, because as far as I know, when I've recorded their music and left their village, it's not like they all look around and say, hey, where's our music gone? It's like vanished, stolen by those guys who came in and recorded and took it away. It's still there when we've left. As far as their attitude towards any kind of recording of their music and its use elsewhere, the main way that we were able to make friends with them and the main thing that they liked was when we explained to them that we want to record their music and show it to cultures outside of Africa, and that we're going to, out of all the tribes of Africa, we've selected them to represent their culture and as an example of what they do. And they were amazed that we would be interested in it for a start. And they loved the fact that it would be recorded. They listened back to our recordings, and they loved the recording of it. And the idea that people across the waters, so to speak, would hear their music was a real charge for them. Nothing could have made them feel better than that. And the idea of, like, theft of their music is something that they just wouldn't have even begun to... If we'd tried to explain it to them, they wouldn't have understood it.
As performance royalties not due to them.
As far as royalties and so on, for a start, this is like an arty project that will not generate a great deal of royalties. It's not going to make my fortune. But even if it did, I've apportioned, I think, a third of it, because at the end of the day, on the album, there is about a third of it is African sounds, and about 2/3 of it is sounds that, you know, I created myself. But the interesting thing is to take all these different elements and put them together. That's what art is all about. It doesn't matter where it came from. It matters if it works, if it's interesting, if it enriches the culture that we have. The most important thing to me is cross-pollination. You can follow a path, like if you're a blues guitarist and all you want to play is blues, that's one thing, and you're just limited to that world. If it isn't a blues note, if it hasn't been played by Otis Redding, then it just isn't part of your vocabulary. I have a certain amount of respect for that kind of musician, but that's not what I am. I'm a mixer. I'll take blues and mix it with this and come up with new forms, because that's what turns me on to listen to, and that's what turns me on to create. And so that's what I do.
Let's talk a bit more about Rumblefish, working with Francis Coppola.
Yes, Rumblefish, the birth of Rhythmatism. The way that all started was that he called me up and he said that he had this film in which time was a very important element, and that he had written some melodies that he wanted me to help him with to exploit this concept of time running out for his characters, and he wanted to express this in rhythm. rhythm in his shooting, you know, like pictures of clocks everywhere, and also in the music. And as we got talking, I figured that there's this way of getting machine sounds, like a printing press, clong, ch, clong, ch, clong, ch, with you put that into a loop, and synchronize that with another loop of a pile driver. And although they're in different rhythms, if you get them synchronized once, like if this one's in a 3/4 time and that one's in a 4/4 time, every 12 beats they'll land together.
They'll land together.
And so even though rhythms that seem disparate, in fact, they come together somewhere. And this is the birth of rhythmatism. The challenge is to make something that's original and exciting and so on, that also connects with the masses. That's the challenge. It's easy, you know, like people talk about selling out and like going commercial as if that's the easy route. It isn't. That's the hard route. The easy route is to be entirely spontaneously creative and totally indulgent. That's the easiest thing to do of all. But getting both of those sides together and connecting in both of those areas is the main challenge.
Where do you go now after the Rhythmatist? Is it going to be followed through?
Where to from here? Well, my big love in life, apart from playing in the band, is working with pictures. I really enjoy the combination of music and pictures. Very powerful combination. You can achieve great dramatic impact. I mean, you can really pull on the heartstrings with an emotive picture, and just two little notes, two little flutes weaving a gentle melody can really have emotional impact. Whereas without the picture, you have to have everything going. You have to have the rhythm, the top line, the chords, the lyric, and everything like that. And it's you achieve less with more stuff. And I really like the economy of working with a picture, and it's still just as powerful, still just as moving, but you can get that with much less.
Do you find that more satisfying then, working with pictures as well?
Well, it's a new world for me. I mean, my whole career up till now has been playing pop music, which is, in many respects, the highest art form. I mean, to be able to communicate something that's interesting and unique, but still understandable and meaningful to lots of people as opposed to just a few intellectuals, is a real challenge.
Do you draw from like your previous works with the Police? And,
very much. I draw from everything I've done. And I bring into, like I've put into the Police, hopefully, more than I've taken out.
Will you be putting some of this into the Police in one way or another?
One way or another, yeah. That's the whole point of all this, is so that when we come back together again with the group, we've each had a chance to rub up against other talents and explore other avenues, so that when we come back together, we've got some new surprises for each other. Because after 8 years of working with, there's only 3 of us after all, and 8 years of working together, we've kind of like, in a way, used each other up. We still have the same kind of feeling about each other's talent, but I've kind of used up the current batch of Sting's bass lines and Andy's guitar riffs and my own drum patterns. And so each of us, we fanned out to go and find some new tricks to bring back into the band.
Was there friction in the band when you went your separate ways to do this?
No, not at all. There's been friction down the years, as in any band. Probably less, in fact, than most bands. We're just a lot more open about it, and people have watched us more closely. We probably, I think, get along better than most groups do. But at the time when we went our separate ways, our last gig was in Melbourne, Australia. And band morale has rarely been higher than on the last tour we did together. It was a really good tour.
It was a big tour.
It was a big tour.
Are you in a position to take 2 years off as a band now before, since the last 5 gigs and release, to come back together?
Well, the other thing is that it's more of a challenge for the Police, to just carry on doing another album and riding it higher and higher is repetitive for us, for one thing, but also the challenge of having to go back and start again. Our next album isn't guaranteed. It's got to be good, or else it will be forgotten. And so we're up against more of a challenge with our next LP than we were for the last, say, 2 or 3.
You've been listening to Sting stuff?
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
You like that?
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to have been involved in that, though? I mean, there are bits you were
I was a
listening
bit...
Sorry. You were listening to Sting, say you listened to his album and you heard like a drum pattern on there and you think, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. He should have done it this way. Do you find it frustrating?
No, not at all. I appreciate that because he's such a good songwriter. I mean, I listened to his album once just out of, curiosity, and I keep listening to it just for pleasure because it's a good record.
Do you find that you feel as if perhaps you own Sting or you own part of each other?
No. That's always been the basis of our relationship, is that we don't own each other. As he says, if you love somebody, set them free. I don't have any ideas for rock videos, so I have no business making rock videos. The Police videos are conceived, or the last few were conceived and directed and produced, and everything was done by Godley and Cream, and we were very much in their hands. I just don't have anything to say in that forum, so I won't say anything. I'll show up as a poser on the spot, but that's all I have really to contribute.
What do you think the Police are going to come back like?
There's 2 possibilities. One is we record in February and tour in August, and the other is we record in August and tour after that.
What does that depend on?
It depends on, well, I'm actually tied up through January, and I think Sting's working until mid-January as well. Andy's off in Japan at the moment, so who knows where he's going to be.
Has he put the band together to tour?
I'm not exactly sure. I haven't seen him for a while. I saw Sting just last week, and we all know what he's up to, but Andy's been very elusive for the last few months.
Is he hiding something?
He's hiding down in Bournemouth or something, or over in Japan.
Are you tempted to tour, or were you tempted to tour?
I have been tempted to tour because that's the one thing that I really miss, is touring. There's nothing that can beat that thrill of a big stage.
Do you really miss it after the Synchronicity tour, which is like...
Well, I've always enjoyed touring. There's just nothing that can beat that thrill of being on that stage with a band like that. I mean, it's a hot band. I mean, there's just no other band that gives me any kind of thrill like that. And there's only 2 of them as well. We can accomplish that much with 2 other guys. Usually it takes 7 people. And I don't enjoy working with big bands as much as like just 3 people is the ultimate group for me.
I've seen quite a bit of Stewart and Andy. I saw Stewart last week in Los Angeles. And we're all having a great time. We're all having a ball, really. It's, we all lived in each other's pockets for 7 years. And we're having a holiday from each other, as much as anything else.
Do you tend to sort of look at the projects that they're doing and weigh up exactly where they're going at the moment?
Well, obviously we're all interested in what each one of us does, because those guys are like my brothers. I love them, and you can't just walk out of their lives and never see them again. So we're obviously very interested in what each other do, sort of beady eye. God, that's good.
What do you think of Stewart's project, for example, his African?
I liked it. I saw it the other day. I liked it very much. Very charming, and the music was really good.
Stewart told us recently that he felt that 1986 would be the year for the Police, that you would get back together and tour again. Do you know any more than that?
I don't know where he gets his information from.
This one's going to run and run, isn't it? Will the Police ever get back together?
It's a pretty good story, isn't it?
Rumours abound all over the place concerning the Police. Things got quite out of hand. How does that happen?
I don't know. I mean, we've been breaking up now for the last 7 years, according to the newspapers. This is the only time it's ever been really taken seriously because we weren't physically together. I mean, usually we're on the road somewhere and we hear that the English tabloids have come out saying the Police break up, it's official. And wait a minute, we're on the road together, we've got 6 more months of touring together, and where on earth do they get this story from? But this time we actually were separate. We weren't on the road, we hadn't made a record and so on, so I suppose the rumors were a little bit more believable.
Does that make you feel important that, people hang on your record?
I was touched that people, because they came out with this completely fabricated story for which they were taken to court, and they had to own up that they'd fabricated it, and they retracted it. Let's make this absolutely clear. we don't need to identify which tabloid it was, but they completely fabricated a story out of thin air and attributed imaginary quotes to myself, which I never said anything like. Anyway, the response was very touching because the police hadn't been doing anything, and there, other groups have risen to prominence and so on, and I was amazed at the amount of concern that was shown over the fate of this group. I mean, I was concerned about the fate of the group because it's my group, but the fact that the world outside was so interested in it, it's very touching.
It's nice that there's interest in you, look, so that you've been splitting up for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
Let's hope the interest keeps up so you're splitting up in the papers for the next 7 years.
Worry about us splitting up is one thing, but whether or not, the next piece of music we come up with is successful, that's another thing altogether, and it'll have to be good. That's the only criterion. It has to be incredible.